Vengeance by George Willson. Chapter 11. Elimination. When the Bluffs Mental Health Facility was built, there was a real need for a psychiatric hospital, and this need carried on for many years until another hospital was built in another part of the state, which proponents of that construction said took some of the burden off of the Bluffs facility. The fact of the matter was that the Bluffs facility wasn't under any stress or burden, as only a few years before that new facility was constructed, they had expanded their own floor plan to include this massive new secure building, now occupied by 6 displaced women. Since they had the run of the place, Tricia had plenty of room to jog without bothering or being bothered by anyone else. She had settled into a decent circuit of halls that didn't even come into the viewing area of the room Darla had previously designated for them, nor was she interested in seeing any of them. She would eventually make her way back there in order to keep everyone from freaking out completely, but she also planned to wait as long as possible and be as tired as she could before returning. She had left the group a little over 30 minutes ago and decided to stop for a moment to rest before continuing. She wished she had remembered some water, since these halls, although air-conditioned, didn't have the best airflow, and she was feeling a bit dehydrated. She knew there was a water fountain next to the bathrooms near the entrance, but she wasn't ready to go back yet. She stopped next to a barred window and looked outside. The land behind the facility stretched out into the darkness beyond the lights on the sides of the buildings, which provided the only dim light within these hallways, which were otherwise very dark, since the administrators only turned on a few lights, thinking they wouldn't need to light the entire wing. It was a logical assumption, and she didn't mind the dark. She would easily be able to find her way back, since the exit signs were all in working order and pointed the way back to the entrance at every junction of the hall. What Tricia didn't know was that as she looked out the window, someone else was watching her from inside a room nearby. Tricia backed away from the window and ran again through the halls past the room where she was being watched. She continued onward, though, turning corners and circling back around on her circuit through the hall. As she passed that room again, she heard a sound and stopped. She looked around, having had the feeling for some time that someone was watching her, and the sound coming from the room seemed to clinch the idea for her. Slowly she stepped toward the room, but did not call out to anyone, as she always felt this would be a foolish thing to do. After all, if someone were spying on her for some reason, calling out would simply alert them to the fact that she was now aware of their presence. Her plan was to turn the light on in the room as soon as she reached it, since walking into a dark room would also be foolish. She may approach much of her life with reckless abandon, but self-preservation was not one of these things. She considered simply running back to everyone else now, but telling them that someone was here without proof would not buy her any more friends than she'd done on her own, and she knew she had no love from anyone here, nor did she care. If she were able to positively identify someone here with them, however, she would be in a very good position to lord it over them. She reached the darkened room and flipped the external switch. These rooms were equipped with an inside and an outside light switch, so that those on the outside could control the individual room's power when they needed to. There was, of course, a master power control that could simultaneously shut down all the rooms, but when the power was on, the individual rooms were generally left off unless occupied. The internal switch was clearly still off, since flipping the external switch did not light up the room. She knew the switch was on the internal side of the room wall directly opposite the external switch. She slid her hand around the door frame toward the switch. As she felt the switch plate, a knife sliced across her wrist. Tricia screamed and jerked her hand back, cradling it against her stomach. She backed away from the doorway, hyperventilating and staring at it, as if the darkened hole before her was what cut her. She was desperate to stop the bleeding which was rapidly soaking her shirt. As she stared, the faceless figure stepped out of the shadows to be visible against the stark white wall. Tricia's eyes opened wide, and she struggled to find her voice. She hadn't really believed Athena's story of the shadow figure until right now, when it was too late. She stumbled, momentarily dizzy from the blood drenching her shirt, and started to run away from the figure. She took a deep breath and screamed, hoping anyone would hear her. "She's here! She's in here with us!" She said nothing more, for the figure moved with incredible speed and sliced right across her throat, silencing her forever. The figure followed this up with a final burial of the knife in Trisha's gut under her ribs. Trisha fell to the ground in a heap, her blood spreading around her. The figure quietly sidestepped the carnage, leaving Trisha where she fell. Darla had gone to her room immediately following her disastrous conversation with Athena, which only served to make her feel worse about her life. An unexpected outcome, considering she just wanted to apologize. She couldn't blame Athena for her feelings, of course, since Darla would admit that she would feel the same way if their roles were reversed. So she had come to their room, changed into her pajamas, and immediately lain down, though her eyes never closed for a second. As depressing as this experience was shaping up, tired was something she knew she would not feel tonight. Knock, knock. Darla walked to the door and opened it to find Mindy standing nervously on the other side, looking very worried. Her eyes darted to Darla's as she played with her hair. Darla invited her in, and Mindy sat down on the bed. Darla sat next to her, both of them facing away from the door, which remained open. "What's wrong?" Darla asked, honestly concerned. "It's Trisha," Mindy said. "She's not back yet." "Now, it's only been 45 minutes since we broke our meeting," Darla assured her. "I'm sure she's still roaming the halls somewhere. I'm surprised you're missing her." "It's not just that," Mindy said. "Did you hear a scream a little while back?" "We're in the loony bin," Darla said with a shrug, trying not to look concerned about a scream and a missing person. "Screams are probably a normal thing here." "Look, I was only joking about reading to her," Mindy confessed. "Forcing it on someone isn't the way to do it. Anyway, it just seems like a long time." Darla put her arm around Mindy, comforting her. "Now, Mindy, we're all a little afraid of what might be out there. We should be. It's not every day some homicidal psychopath makes you a target." Mindy gave her a disgusted look, and Darla smiled, knowing that was not really in the best of taste, considering their very real circumstances. God forbid, right? "All the same, though," Darla continued, "we're locked up in a very secure facility. There's no way a killer's getting in here." And she believed that wholeheartedly. With everything they witnessed and experienced in getting into this part of the facility, it seemed very unlikely that the killer would have any way of getting past all that security. And if the killer were one of them, they would only have what was available to commit any crime with, and there wasn't much here. "Tell me about this Greater Life church you go to," Darla suggested. "I don't know much about the people past the college stuff," Mindy shrugged. "I usually sit with my age group in service when Pastor Chambers preaches." "Tell me about everything anyway," Darla said. "It might help to get both of our minds off of this mess for a bit." Darla listened to Mindy talk about her post-Hank Michaels life, hoping it might take her mind off of the mess they were in and let her sleep eventually. Yet, as they took comfort in their supposed security, the faceless figure walked past the door behind them. The hallway was completely empty as the figure made her way to her next victim, but at present she was simply surveying her surroundings, searching for the perfect opportunity. She walked to the bathroom door, and in this wing, the main restroom contained not only toilets, but also a communal shower area, such as one might find in a high school locker room. At present, Laura was alone in the shower area, wrapped in a towel, and working to shave her legs. The figure paused for a moment, watching her, but the sound of a toilet flush drew her attention away from Laura. She turned, walked into an open stall, and closed the door just as Ashley exited another stall. Ashley walked to the border of the shower area and watched Laura for a moment from the position that the figure had stood in just moments before. "We're stuck here all night, and you're actually bothering to shave your legs," Ashley declared. Laura glanced up to her without a trace of humor. "A girl's got to look her best, no matter what," Laura told her very matter-of-factly. "That's what my mom always says anyway. I guess it's a hard habit to break." "Maybe if there were a guy in here with us," Ashley shrugged, "but with a bunch of other women? I can wait until tomorrow." "Suit yourself, Ashley, but don't complain to me when your legs feel all scratchy tomorrow morning." Laura said it like some kind of portent, which led Ashley to immediately scratch one of her legs. "My legs don't feel scratchy," Ashley said, and then noticed she was scratching a leg and stopped. You say that now, Laura warned with a smile. I'm going to the room, Laura, Ashley said. When do you think you'll be done? I won't be long, Laura said, concentrating on her task at hand. She took a few more strokes on her legs when she realized that Ashley had remained standing at the entry to the shower. Laura stopped and looked at her. Do you mind? Sorry, Ashley said sheepishly. It's just that I'd feel better about traveling together. Hey, there's no one in here with us. No one can get past the gate, much less the guard, and the bars, and that door where you have to get buzzed and scan at the same time. Still, it's just logical, you know. It's safe. Go to the room. Don't be too long, okay? Ashley conceded as she backed out of the bathroom. Finally, she turned on her heel and walked out the door. Laura shook her head incredulously and rolled her eyes, thinking that Professor Michaels wasn't exactly into this for the intelligence in a lot of cases, especially that last one. She checked out her leg to make sure she hadn't missed any spots before switching to the other leg and lathering up. Her concentration fully engaged, she didn't see the faceless figure standing back at the entry of the shower area, watching her again. Laura was oblivious to the presence of the faceless figure, but the figure walked back into his stall as the bathroom door opened again. You're shaving your legs? Mindy's voice rang out across the bathroom. Laura paused and rolled her eyes again. Don't start with me.